So guys, it's been a long time since I've done a live, and I've had so many requests to start doing more. So I decided tonight was the night. I'm going to start doing more lives, answering people's questions. If anybody has questions, please message them in. Ask me direct questions, ask me anything about symptoms, about anxiety conditions themselves, about recovery. I want to cover every single aspect of recovery from every anxiety condition imaginable, whether that be generalized anxiety disorder, panic attacks, agoraphobia, monophobia, health anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, low mood. You tell me, I'll talk about it. But I just need you to message me and let me know what kind of subject matter you'd like me to cover. Just for hi Sean, just for clarity, for those people that perhaps don't know who I am, I grew up in Worcestershire in the UK. I'm 56, soon to be 57 years old, but for the first 22 years, well, from the age of 4 till I was 26, I suffered with chronic anxiety conditions. It started with eating issues, choking, the fear of dying, the fear of passing out, and that soon blossomed into health anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia, monophobia. I had all manner of inappropriate thoughts, Pure O, OCD, and so on. And it lasted till I was 26 years of age when I recovered, having understood the true science of anxiety and fear, and truly understood the physiological nature of these conditions. And this is absolutely key to what I'm going to be talking about at all times, because there is so much BS out there in the world around these subject matters, and they're not as complex and not as medically or psychologically impactful as you would believe. In fact, one of the key issues around anxiety conditions is the inappropriate and incredibly inaccurate diagnoses that are made by people who really don't understand the core science of these conditions. Now, look, I grew up in a kind of medical environment in that my mum was a nurse practitioner, a state registered nurse. She was very heavily embedded in the National Health Service and all aspects of that, from social work right the way through to being a surgery nurse. And my dream of being a surgeon, a heart surgeon specifically, was somewhat scuppered by the fact that, you know, I reached the age at which I could choose which way I was going to go with my career, and I was having chronic panic attacks and anxiety. And although I had the emotional drive to become somebody who would help to save lives, I thought surgeon with a scalpel in his hand, potentially having a panic attack or feeling as anxious as I was back then, not a good idea. So I veered away from that idea that I could go to medical school, which, do I regret it? Had I not had anxiety, that's where I would have ended up. But I did have anxiety, so I didn't end up there. And I think in hindsight, I've kind of come full circle now, having experienced anxiety for 22 years. And when I say anxiety, I mean fear disorder, disordered fear, which manifests in so many ways. And I have come full circle round to helping people again, and I feel very fulfilled doing that, despite all of the crap I have to take from people who attack me for not having relevant qualifications. The thing is, you know, what are relevant qualifications? Is it a degree in psychology? No, and I can explain that. Is it a degree in psychiatry? Is it a medical degree with psychiatry specialism? No, and I can tell you exactly why that is. And in a nutshell, that's because psychology and psychiatry follow the same principles, which are those embedded in psychology, which is a theoretical field of study in universities, and to my mind should never be taken out of a university to use clinically. Clinical psychology, to my mind, is lunacy. It just doesn't, to a large extent, most of it doesn't make reference to actual science, which is why so many people suffer from these conditions, because they're just not getting the truth. Just had somebody say, can you cover the topic of Pure O? Yeah, of course I will. I'll come around to that in a second. getting back to the core subject, I mean, this brings me to the subject actually about Pure O. The thing is that people are under this massive misapprehension, and I'm here to talk about OCD and Pure O tonight, that Pure O and OCD is some kind of mental illness. They're not, any more than panic disorder, agoraphobia, or emetophobia, or health anxiety, or an eating disorder, or mental illness. They're not. They play out in the same way as what people would perceive to be some kind of mental distress. And when some people have panic attacks, for example, or they experience derealization or depersonalization, it's so convincing when somebody tells you that you've got a mental illness or a chemical imbalance. You're so convinced by the fact that all of the physiological experiences you're having seem to point to that fact, but it's just not true. It would be like calling perimenopause or menopause, or any kind of hormone issue, even diabetes. We don't refer to them as mental illnesses. Menopause isn't a mental illness. Diabetes isn't a mental illness. So why the hell is anxiety? Because the science is the same science. It isn't about a poorly head. It isn't about chemical imbalance in the brain or synapses. It's absolute nonsense. So anybody that's told you that just doesn't understand. They just don't understand the psychophysiology of anxiety. And when I say anxiety, I'm going to clarify this again. I mean fear disorder, the disorder of fear. Because fear isn't an emotion for a start. And again, people go, well, Charles, you can't say that. Of course it makes me feel emotional. Yeah, well, menopause makes women feel emotional, but is it the emotions? No, it's the hormone imbalances affecting the body and brain in a way that gives rise to emotional response. And that's why pregnant women start crying suddenly. Is it that they're sad? No, it's that their body is producing endocrine responses that are producing the experience of sadness or happiness or whatever it is that they feel is making them cry. So you cannot, the problem is, physical response can lie. Just because something feels, you feel frightened doesn't mean that what you're experiencing is frightening. Your body can lie to you, and that's what fear disorder is. It's a masquerade. It's just not true. It's your body and brain activating fear when it's unnecessary, and it's lying to you. So all anxiety conditions are obsessive compulsive disorder. That's the first thing to say, and I won't go into qualifying that right now. But in psychiatric and psychological care and in medical care, and if people reach for the psychiatric Bible, and I won't say any more than that, to look up what it is a patient is suffering from, they'll come up with a whole load of definitions of a whole load of conditions that they've drawn from experience, really, more than anything else. And it's like separating flu down into coffee chest syndrome and runny nose syndrome and dry eye syndrome and sore throat syndrome. It's bloody lunacy. If you've got a virus or any kind of bacterial infection, it's going to produce a set of symptoms that are the symptomology of that particular condition and nothing more. And when the condition is gone, the virus is gone, or the bacteria has been killed or removed from the body in some way, all of the symptoms are going to settle down because you can't have the symptoms in the absence of the core condition. So it's the same with anxiety. If you've got fear disorder, you're going to have obsessive thoughts and you're going to have compulsions. You're going to have disordered physiological responses. And those are generally around heart and the heart and breathing. There are also others, like hypersensitization. So, during when people go into fear response, they go into this hypervigilance, which sensitizes all of the sensory organs, and it can produce side effects that are very far-reaching. Tinnitus, ringing in the ears, blurred vision, dilated pupils. You can change your smell, your taste, the way your skin perceives your environment. Every single sense, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin, are heightened to look for danger. So all of this stuff can be really simply explained away, but it's not. Psychology and psychiatry and medicine decide not to do that in favor of pushing you into, it might be free to you, but into expensive remedies, whether that be medicinal or psychiatric or psychological. But it's unnecessary because none of these conditions are mental illnesses at all. So to get to your question here about Pure O, what is Pure O then? So if OCD is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and it manifests in the way that most people recognize, which is usually things like hand washing or compulsive behaviors around organizing, or, it could be number games in your head or word games. It could be any kind of obsessive focus that feels compulsive can be categorized as OCD. But like I said previously, all anxiety conditions are OCD. And again, look, I'm not going to confuse matters by going into that, but trust me, they are. And I will come to this over the videos I intend to do. So Pure O is said to be, and look, I didn't come up with any of these acronyms. I didn't come up with OCD and PTSD and agoraphobia and monophobia and Pure O and HOCD and POCD and ROCD. And I didn't come up with any of these names. I would have come up with one name, because there is only one condition. So this has been done, again, by psychology and psychiatry, presumably to give people various treatment options, or to push people, towards the various medications or treatment pathways. And by doing so, they're obviously, supporting the business model. Let's put it that way. So what is Pure O? And how does it relate to OCD and anxiety? Well, anxiety is the fear disorder. So you have to have fear disorder. That produces obsessive compulsive and disordered responses. So the obsession is your core focus, your anxious focus. That could be food, distance from home, your sexuality, it doesn't matter. And then the compulsion, obviously, is the response, the fight or flight part of it all. So the compulsion might be staying at home, or it might be not eating the food, or it might be, checking your sexuality, or whatever it happens to be. So there's the compulsive response. So it's a 3-stage process. And in that process, you're going to be doing risk assessments. Now, if your risk assessments aren't about washing your hands or ordering stuff or hoarding or those sort of obsessive compulsive responses, they can be about things in your general environment. For example, they could be about, somebody in your family, a male member. I had HOCD, by the way. So HOCD is said to be homosexual OCD. Please. And it can work in both directions. So, gay people can have thoughts about having sex with the opposite sex, and heterosexual people about people of the opposite sex. So it can work in both directions. And I've helped people with every manifestation of it you can imagine. But in my case, because I'm heterosexual, my risk assessment within the fear response was, what if I'm gay? So I'd be looking at blokes saying, yeah, well, he's a good looking bloke, but I don't want to have sex with him. And then I'd be thinking, well, what if I did? Well, I won't, because I'm not gay. Yeah, but what if I did? And it's the same with, what if I ate that food? Well, I could get fat. So what do? Avoid the food. It's all about recognizing and dealing with threat. And that's all Pure O is. And it's the same for HOCD, homosexual OCD, ROCD, which is relationship OCD or religious OCD, can focus on both. And then there's POCD, which is where you imagine doing things to kids. And this is males and females, by the way. But it's all based on that core risk assessment. It is nothing to do with wanting to do those things. In fact, people who want to do those things are people with the issue. People who risk assess doing those things are the people that don't have the issue. Because if you're risk assessing doing something, it means you don't want to do it. It isn't your natural way to do things. So if you're straight, thinking, what if I'm gay? The reason you're doing that risk assessment is because it goes against your natural self. And it's perfectly natural to be heterosexual or gay. But the point is, you know what you are, and you're risk assessing to the opposite. In the same way as, what if I pick up this knife and I do this? What if I eat that food? What if I go outside? The same risk assessment applied to different subject matter. And that's all it is. And in OCD, which is obviously what we're here to talk about, it isn't specific to relationships, religion, sex, homosexuality. It isn't specific to harming people. It isn't specific to do POCD, to do with doing things to kids. Those are the subject matters that have been categorized within Pure O. But if you extend those same risk assessments out, what if I hoard all of this stuff and keep it and never throw it away? What if I wash my hands repeatedly? What if I get ill? What if? All of these what ifs are the subject matter that fuel the fear disorder. So it's only the subject matter that changes. Do you get what I mean? I've got another question here. I've had anxiety on and off since 1991 when I got bad one. I walk up and down the room for hours. Done it, been there. Sean, let me tell you, that's so familiar to me. I used to, Beth would tell you, my wife, when we first got together, I'd get up in the middle of the night, I'd lie in bed, couldn't sleep, thoughts racing, panic attacks, night frights, racing heart. It was horrific. So I'd get up and I'd pace around the house. I'd splash my face with cold water. I'd stand looking out. I had these old sash windows, and I'd stand looking out to the street, trying to find sense, trying to get rid of the derealization and depersonalization, trying to draw myself back into myself. And I'd stand looking in the mirror, splashing my face with water, just to know I exist, because I felt removed from myself. I felt vacant, and everything seemed dreamy, and which of course is what fear disorder does. It puts you into this process of hypervigilance, and the derealization and depersonalization comes in. Then the risk assessments come in, and you just stand there ruminating about the same things over and over again. And that's what fear disorder is. But the point is, fear disorder is what anxiety is, but it's curable. And anybody that tells you it's curable through talking about it, cognitive therapy, thinking about it, rating your anxiety, keeping anxiety diaries, tapping yourself, eye movement desensitization, or any sort of medication is in themselves tapped, because none of those things address the core issue. You can't relax your way out of an anxiety condition. You talk to a psychophysiologist, you talk to a neurologist or an endocrinologist and say, what is the opposite of anxiety, of fear, of panic? It isn't sleeping, it isn't relaxing, it isn't meditating. These things can't stop the anxiety because it can't stop fear. Fear is a natural, normal process that everybody has to keep them safe, in the same way as they have digestion or respiration or circulation, or they have their endocrine system or their neurology. It's going on no matter what you think or want to think. If I said to you, stop digesting your food, you say, yeah, I can't do that, Charles. Well, it's your bloody stomach, do it. Well, I can't though. Why not? Because it's autonomic. And so is fear. However, the only thing that you need to know about this is that despite being fear necessary and kind of uncontrollable in its truest form, so when it's absolutely appropriate, when it falls into anxiety, it becomes disordered fear. That's the bit you can fix. In the same way as, a natural, normal process like a bowel movement, everybody needs a bowel movement, because without it, you're going to explode and you're just not going to get rid of the waste matter. So it's a normal, natural thing. But when you get diarrhea and the pain and the bloating and it's coming out of you like an avalanche, that's disorder. So there's bowel movement, disordered bowel movement. And I liken this to anxiety and fear. Fear is natural and normal, as is a bowel movement. Anxiety is the disordered version of fear, as diarrhea is the disordered version of a bowel movement. One's just faster and messier. And that's it. Nothing to do with a poorly head, nothing to do with serotonin levels, nothing to do with chemical imbalance, nothing to do with trauma, nothing to do with any of the things that you'd be led to believe by psychology and psychiatry and medicine. It is entirely to do with endocrine imbalance activated by a fear response initially, yes, agreed, but that isn't the cause. The cause of anybody's anxiety is their ability to suffer. And not everybody can, which is why we all know people that will never and have never suffered from an anxiety condition. And they look at you and go, well, why do you suffer with that? I don't understand it. I've never suffered. No, because you can't. And there's a genetic, physiological reason why that is. But do you think psychology and psychiatry know about it or care about it or would even make reference to it? No. Why? Because they want to make money from suffering. They don't want to remedy it. We did loads of trials with private organizations, with universities, even with the NHS in the UK. And they quickly show you the door when you prove to them that the science is true, that the science works, and that everybody is curable. When you prove to them that you can change the face of mental well-being globally, and you show them that, and they're all blown away by this massive success. 67 people put through a trial, and every single one of them reduced their anxiety within 3 weeks to a level that was generally across the board cured. They came in severe, 18.24 out of 21 using GAD-7, and left 2.84 average. A reduction of over 16 points in less than 3 weeks with no drugs, no therapy, and they were blown away. So what do? They threw us out. Why? Because the psychologists and psychiatrists said that we were going to damage their business model, that we'd make them redundant. And they're right. We would have done. But the difference is we could have trained them to do what we do and relieved 96% of mental health cases. But instead, the selfishness was, no, we can't do this. We have to maintain the numbers of people that we treat, otherwise we lose our budgets. That was their line. Disgusting. But the point is, and I hope you're taking some refuge or some form of, I hope you feel inspired by what I'm saying, because all anxiety sufferers, whether they've got an eating disorder, whether they've got bulimia or anorexia, whether they've got whether self-harming, or they've got panic disorder or monophobia or agoraphobia, any of those conditions, they can and will recover quickly if they do with their body and mind what their body and mind were designed to do. You cannot relax yourself. You can't use mindfulness or any kind of meditation. You can't use drugs. You can't. They do not address the associated science. So if you want to recover from an anxiety condition, you can do those things, but you won't recover. You might feel mildly reassured, or you might like the practitioner, or it might be nice to have hot rocks put on your back, or whatever it is, you're having a bit of Reiki here and there, or some relaxation. I don't know. I had it too, and now I wish I got the money I spent on it. Believe me. I spent probably 50 or 60,000 pounds on all of this absolute nonsense. And this is why I do what I do, because I just don't want you to have to go through that. I don't want you to waste the time and money that I wasted, regardless of your age. Kids come to us daily that can't go to school, especially after lockdown. Chronic panic attacks, eating disorders, you name it. Horrific. Kids are 4 years old, 5 years old. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. And they've been to psychologists and psychiatrists and having this intervention and that intervention. Loads of kids come to us with gender issues. I think I might be a girl. I think I might be a boy. Loads of people come to us with, sometimes, I mean, they're pretty obtuse, especially some, adults. They admit to some of the thoughts they're having, and and some of them way out there. And psychology and psychiatry would make an absolute feast of the things that people tell us, because they'd say, oh, that's psychosis, that's delusions. It's not. People that come to us, saying, I think I'm a spider. They know they're not a spider, but what if I am? Yeah, exactly. What if? What does that remind me of? What if? It's sad that, over 96% of mental health issues, those categorized as mental health issues, are anxiety related and are therefore completely curable in record time if you know what to do. But again, during lockdown, we helped over 25,000 members of the National Health Service. Why? Because they were chronically anxious and their own staff members couldn't help them. Their own psychologists. I had psychologists and psychiatrists coming to us to help them with their anxiety, panic attacks, and phobias during lockdown because of the stress they're experiencing in the hospitals and in the NHS system. And they were coming to us for treatment and then going back to work the next day and treating people for anxiety. It's mind-blowing. It really is. But the truth is the truth. You can't change the science. Fear disorders, anxiety issues, anxiety conditions, and what people call anxiety disorders are entirely curable, quickly so, without medication or any kind of psychiatric or psychological intervention. Why? Because they're not of that nature. That's the truth of it. And I hope over the next few weeks, as I do more of these videos, you'll start to understand that there is a cornering of the market by people who actually don't have the knowledge. They just don't have the medical knowledge, the physiological knowledge of the physiology of the human body, and because they haven't been taught it, to understand what these disorders truly are. But they are not mental illness or chemical imbalances. That is absolutely certain. And I hope you take the time to listen to me and listen to more people that we're going to introduce into these over the few weeks, or come to anxietyproject.online and join my live webinars and ask questions, and do what it is that I know and that all of our staff, who are all trained mental health professionals, know to be the actual solution to these conditions. Let me just read some of these messages. When I get one, I put one of the videos on because you make sense more than doctors. Thank you, Charles. You're welcome. You're very welcome. You're right about psychologists. They talk complete drivel, tell you to manage anxiety and look for things in your life that could be the cause. of anxiety when, as you say, there is one cause. Yeah, the cause of anxiety is your ability to suffer. There are loads of things in life that can activate fear. Those aren't the causes. We help a lot of people with PTSD that have been, that have been in a car crash or in the military, or, have simply experienced something slightly traumatic. PTSD can come from anywhere. And PTSD is just an anxiety condition in which it's easy to identify the original catalyst. And I say catalyst because that's what it is. So people that have been, had PTSD because they're in the police force and they've seen something or experienced something, or in the military, or whether they've just gone to a dentist and experienced something traumatic. PTSD can hit anybody, but PTSD is not a separate condition. It's just an anxiety condition in which you can identify the original catalyst. But the catalyst isn't the cause. You can search around and find the cause, the catalyst for your fear as much as you like. It ain't going to help. It's a nonsense to even address it or think about it or focus on it. And again, I'm not talking, this isn't my opinion. Everything I will tell you is based on fact, on scientific fact, on the facts that are contained within the physiology of yours and everybody else's body on this planet. Uncontestable facts that are just not even debatable. I'll let psychology get on with theory. I'll deal in facts because I'm the only person that has put together this a program that actually produces, in every single case, a complete cure if people listen and do. So, I feel strongly, as you can tell, that somebody needs to speak out and speak out very clearly, and let people like you guys listening that are suffering, needlessly suffering. You need the facts, and I'll do whatever it takes for me to present to you those facts, and for you to be able to go away. And if you want to research what I'm saying, research it, but research it in the right places, and I can point you to those if you ask. Because I want you to have the facts. I want you to know that they are actually not supposition. They're not my, sort of musings or theories. Everything I tell you is factual. And whether you ask me about a symptom or a thought, or you ask me about, what treatments do or don't do, or you ask me anything really, I'm never stumped for an answer. Why? Because I've sat in front of tens of thousands of people like you at our retreats and workshops. I've, on my own, helped 20, 30,000 people over the years, probably, including, in this last Olympics, the Olympic rower that got a gold, Rory, he's one of our clients, and he openly states that, he wouldn't be where he was today, having won the gold in the Olympics, last year, the most recent Olympics, if he hadn't found this program. And, we have doctors and nurses and psychologists and ex-counselors working with us. Why? Because they've either used the program and done our training program as one of our practitioners, or because they feel strongly to represent what actually works to people like you. Gerald says, hi, sir. Hi. The cause of anxiety disorder is amygdala or creative intellect. The cause of anxiety, okay, let's get to that. You say the amygdala. The amygdala is the light switch. All the amygdala does is take incoming data, and your brain analyzes that data and decides whether to turn that light switch on or off. So in other words, if all of the data adds up and the risk assessment is done and it's decided to go into fight or flight, the amygdala will activate the fear response mechanism, as I call it. I don't call it fight or flight because it's so inaccurate. It's so ridiculous and misrepresentative. So once the amygdala has done its thing, and by the way, the amygdala is a pair of organs in the brain that sit, left and right hemispheres. They activate fear response by making the decision to activate the neurology that then activates the endocrinology that gives rise to fear response, which doesn't happen in the brain. So it isn't an emotion, and that's what I said earlier. So what is the cause? Creative intellect plays a part in it, because what I call creative intellect. So your ability to somatize, to imagine, plays a part in all of this. But no, I mean the cause is the genetic predisposition. Certain people, are born, as we all know, with creativity, some with a flair for words or mathematics or have physical flair and become a sports person or a musician, for example. So we all have these traits that are genetic markers passed down to us by that inverted pyramid of people that came before us, our parents, their parents. And, by the fifth generation, you've got like 20 people, 30 people behind you, and then 150 people, then 1,000 people, then 10,000 people, which is why they say, we're all in some way related. It becomes millions of people in just a few generations. And you know that 10% of the people that ever lived are still alive today? It's roughly 10%. It's incredible. Incredible. So what is the cause? Is it creative intellect? Plays a part. Genetics plays a part. But it's basically how you're aligned, which of course is why people with autistic spectrum disorders and dyspraxia and dyslexia and attention deficit and all of those, what people would call, now call sort of neurodiversity, which is a term that I absolutely hate because it isn't representative of the fact. These traits and these features that people have make certain people within those categorized segments of society, because they're not conditions, they're not illnesses, more have a higher prevalence of developing an anxiety condition. And there's reasons for that, and they're genetic, and they're neurological, they're physiological, and they're all part of the tangled web of who we are as individuals, the unique us. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, I came here to talk about OCD, and I'll finish off talking about OCD. If you suffer with OCD, it's pretty overwhelming. I had it at a very high level. So I know what it is to suffer, believe me, but I also know what it is to recover. And I know how to recover. And I know that everybody I've ever helped, regardless of their background, creed, color, age, time suffered, they recover when they understand the truth, but they don't recover when they're told the BS that is spread by people who, possibly well-meaning people, possibly quite nice people, but people who fall into two categories, and those two categories are very, very defined. And I said this once at an event, and it caused an absolute bloody avalanche of disgust. But I said, people are either fall into the category of doing what they do, knowing that it doesn't work, but doing it for money, which I call greed, or doing what they do, not knowing that it doesn't work, which I call ignorance. And so if you're not producing recovery, you fall into one of those two categories. You're either ignorant or greedy, but neither of which is defendable. There are people like me and my staff that for many, 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 many years have provided people with true recovery. They come, they do, they're cured. Isn't that what we all want for people? And when I go into schools and they say to me 70% of our pupils suffer with anxiety, and that is a genuine statement that happens very regularly, and I help these kids, and within 3 weeks, 30 kids are back at school, 50 kids are back playing sport, 30 kids have stopped crying in the classroom, the nurses are saying that less people are visiting at lunch break. Isn't that what we want? Isn't that the cure we want? Sorry, just there are some more. There are some more questions here. Let me just get back to them. You're explaining everything very well. Thank you very much from the bottom of your heart. You're very welcome. As a therapist interested in the holistic and integrative approach, I'm looking forward to understanding your method. Thank you so much. Get in touch with us. We have an ever increasing group of recovery practitioners that we put through our recovery training, and they join, as I say, ever increasing team. We have people in South Africa, Canada, America, across Europe, and it's a growing team, and it's just amazing to see recovery happening in front of your eyes, which is what everybody says. In fact, a friend of mine visited one of our retreats once. We run these anxiety recovery retreats, only in the UK, because people come from all over the world to them, believe it or not. And we had he was a psychiatrist who'd got 30 years in the NHS, and he came to our retreat and literally just sat in to see what happened. Because somebody I went to school with, a lovely guy. And at the end of it, he said, "Charles, can I have a word?" And we went into this side room, and I thought, I wonder what he's going to say. And he said, "I've never seen anything like this before." And I said, "Well, no, it's pretty unique, isn't it, John?" And he said, "I don't mean that." He said, "Recovery." these people are recovering. And he said, and some of them I'd say are recovered. And I said, what do you mean? Surely it's something you see regularly working in the NHS. And he was at the top of his game, head of a department, and I won't say which department. Kind of gives it away. And he said, no. He said, this is incredible. He said, I've never seen people recover before. I said, get out. Come on. I said, you must see people recover. Nah, people don't recover. What do you mean? They don't recover. We treat them and we handle them and we give them medication and we give them reassurance, but they don't recover. And as far as I was concerned, recovery from these conditions isn't something that can happen. We help people to cope and manage. I said, we've been doing this for, I think at the time, about 9 years, 2 retreats a month, 15 people per retreat. And recovery is something we take for granted. And he said, I've never seen it before. And that blew me away. And I've since found a video, actually. I might even see if I can get it on here or make reference to it. It was a documentary that was done where they interviewed psychiatrists and said, how many of your patients have ever recovered? No, none. Whew. And it was dozens of psychiatrists that they questioned and said, how many recover? None. None. I take it for granted. My clients, my private clients, they recover. It's a fact. You can see them all over. If you go to the lindenmethodreviews.com, you'll see thousands of reviews from people saying, I did this and I'm cured. Some people take longer than others, but they all get cured. Why? Because they follow the science. Lenny, I'd love to hear from you. Just contact us, and I'll put you in touch with Beth if you like, and you could talk to her, because she runs the accreditation program. Join our team. We'd love you to be involved. And a holistic approach. Wow, yeah, a holistic in its truest sense. This is about the whole, about the whole of the physiology and about recovery using the whole of the physiology. It's what we want, isn't it? I'd love you to join our team and join us to spread the word. Big things are happening. Big things are happening. Trust me. And believe me, it hasn't been devoid of diversity. Anybody that knows me and knows what we do and fishes around will find people that are just foul. People who just will say and do anything and make up the biggest load of crap to discredit me. And most of them are professors of psychology, doctors of psychology, and psychologists. Genuinely. Death threats, you name it. We've had everything. Stalking, death threats, things thrown at the house, photographs taken, lies told. It's unbelievable. They'll say and do anything to shut me up, even threatening my kids. That's how bad it is. But the thing is, you've either got credibility and you've got respect and integrity, which my granddad told me were the 3 most important features of any human. Any gentleman, he said, actually, at the time. If you've got that, you've either got it or you ain't. It's as simple as that. Anyway, guys, lots of love. Thank you for listening to me. Sensations come. How do I stop it? This is Sean. Okay, look, Sean, the sensations are going to come till they stop. The problem is with fear disorder is that it is an intersystemic condition that will affect every aspect of your physiology, and therefore give rise to a huge quantity of symptoms and thoughts. So, and those aren't going to stop until the fear disorder is gone, until the fear has subsided. In this case, yes, it's inappropriate fear, it's anxiety, but it's still fear. So, it's like having a cold. Well, when's the snotty nose going to go? When the cold's gone. And this is the issue. So it's important to focus on recovery and do what it takes to recover, really recover. And you'll find that your anxiety and every single symptom, thought, experience, gone. Lenny says, thank you, I'll contact you. Brilliant. Yeah, it's Beth you need to speak to, Lenny. John, is it John or John? Thank you, Charles, you're very welcome. Lots of love, guys. Thanks for listening to me. I will be doing more of these, but for the time being, you're welcome, Sean. Take care and have faith in what I've said to you. Please just suspend your disbelief. Let's put it that way. Hang your disbelief up like an old jacket and just listen. And if anything I say can be proven incorrect, well, I'd be shocked, because I've sat in front of psychiatrists, psychologists, every ist you can imagine at our retreats and our workshops over the last 30 years. And everybody has just gone, why didn't I know this? Or they've said, I knew this, I'd just forgotten it. Take care, guys. Be good.